102.7 WMOM and Hot Country Hits 99.9, home of your new country and your all-time favorites. 8:33 now, 33 minutes after the hour, and it is time for our City of Ludington update. In the studio with us, Mayor Mark Barnett. How you doing, sir?
Good morning. How are you?
All right, I'm doing okay. And as well, Mitch Foster, City Manager. How are you doing this morning?
It's a lovely Monday morning.
Absolutely. It's not too bad. It's fall colors. The leaves are changing. Do you do any sort of color tours and stuff like that at all or not?
We took a drive up to the tunnel of trees over the summer because we were up in Mackinac and we drove back that way. And it's a beautiful area, but I'm not doing a color tour through that area when you're going 20 miles an hour back bumper to bumper. It'd probably take you 4 hours.
Yes.
So we'll go up north. My wife's family lives over in northern Wisconsin, so we might take a drive over there at some point and see that kind of the fall colors that way too.
Yeah, I think the one of the worst areas traffic wise, I think it's Arcadia, I believe. Where it dips down and you're just bumper to bumper and usually there's no easy way to get around there. Do you ever go through there at all or not?
Not too much. We tend to go back and forth between here and southeast part of the state, and when you get over into Oakland County, there's a beautiful array of colors as well. Just a little bit later than where we get it up here and up further north.
Wait, by array of colors, do you mean grays and
please,
other buildings and concrete?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But there's not cheese all over the highway either. You know.
No, correct. It's interesting. And please, no spills around here. You hear some of those stories out there of these trucks spilling, and it's very interesting. But yeah, let's stay away from that.
What would be okay if it spill around here, though? Like asparagus?
Beer? Stuff like that. You know. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. Asparagus would be.
That'd be okay. Everybody would go line up and grab it.
Absolutely.
I'm crossing my fingers for a Snickers truck. So.
Okay. Get it fast. We're talking with Mayor Mark Barnett and City Manager Mitch Foster here on the morning show. And topics gearing up for tonight's City Council meeting. And one of them is the alley paving. That's going to pretty much start the meeting. You've got a public hearing in regards to this. Tell us why you need a public hearing for that paving project, the alley paving project.
Well, I think it's because there's a number of different property owners that are going to be involved in that, and it affects a larger number rather than just a single resident or necessarily just a city-owned street. I mean, the alley is really important and connected to the properties in a sense. So
okay, so and tonight you're looking for what sort of response or feedback from individuals? What would be your expectations this evening?
Just that folks would come in and understand. Frankly, people that aren't even connected to those particular alleys would understand the process relative to their own alley. Okay. You know, whether it's paved or not, but that would be something that would be important to them and understand the process. It is something that individual property owners have skin in the game, and so I would hope that they would come in and just make sure that they're fully informed about it. And if they're one of the signers of the petition, that kind of thing, that they would come or at least view the meeting afterwards and just see what's going on and make sure that they're fully understanding it. So.
And on the agenda tonight, it says close public hearing. And that's just literally you're going to close a public hearing, or is there a closed hearing in regards to this?
Nope, not at all. So it really is just, when we bring up the topic, we're going to open up a public hearing specifically for that issue.
Okay.
And then we'll close that before we move on to the next item of business, which is adopt the determination of necessity and confirmation of assessment role, things that need to be done so that the money can happen and so the work can be done, they can be paid.
Let's talk about that, if you don't mind, from cost-wise. Mitch, I'll throw you here in it. What this alley, and we've heard some people, they've kind of complained a little bit about, okay, this alley is closing down, parking, being able to get into that parking lot. I've taken that alley to get into the parking lot, the old bank parking lot there. What feedback are you getting in regards to this, I guess would be the first question. And what's the cost, or if any, of that's going to happen here?
So actually, this is we're talking almost two separate things. So the alley project that's on the agenda for tonight is actually the 300 block of North William and Robert.
Okay.
That is a residentially driven project where at least 70% of the neighbors or property owners on that alley decided they wanted to have their alley paved, and they would pay for it through taxes.
Okay.
So that's what's going on tonight. On the alley behind Sportsman's, at this point in time, we still have half of it closed off on one end, and then the other quarter closed off on the other side for the Andes project. But there's still access kind of up through the middle for those that have accessibility issues, as well as for those that are going to some of those businesses back there. In the long run, I think the hope is still that, once the Andes project is done, and maybe even the bank building, that all of the property owners can kind of come together and say, hey, do we want to have this be pedestrian only? Do we want to, try another pilot program there, or do we open it back up maybe to more limited traffic than what it has been in the past? I think there's a number of different options that they might look at.
And since you clarified the alley project that you're going to have on the agenda tonight, let's dive a little bit more into that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
With the houses that align that, they have the right to petition the city to say, hey, instead of us taking care of it, we would like the city to take care of it. And so that's under consideration?
So the way that it works is every alley within the city of Ludington is the responsibility of those that live or own property along it.
Okay.
So even if the city owned property along an alley, we would have to be part of that petition. We would have to pay our fair share. And so same circumstance tonight. The request is that they all want to have it paved. Okay. The property owners will share in that cost as long as under the public hearing tonight, nothing crazy comes up, and we still stay above that 70% number.
Okay.
The city, we pre-bid alley paving so that Reith Riley or whoever gets that bid, we know in advance, hey, here's your linear foot cost to pave an alley or redo an alley. Yeah. And so they know that in advance. They're told that when they sign the petition, here's what your number looks like. And then they can determine whether or not they want to pay for it. Some people decide to pay it all up front. Others want to do it over a 5-year, 7-year period of time. But generally, this is the second one we had this year, and these are the first ones since 2013. Okay. So it's kind of a newer process for everybody to go back.
How did the first one go?
Oh, easy. Okay. That was actually along the block where County Commissioner Nick Krieger lives, and my understanding is he'd been working on that for a while and finally had a number of folks that were interested in doing it as well. Okay. And so I think, similar situation here. You've got people that have probably wanted to do this for a few years. Mm-hmm. They get the support from their neighbors, and then, all right, it's time to go. So that's typically how these things work.
Do you mind me asking the cost of a paving project for an alley?
If I was trying to find it, we got these giant documents that go along with it. I think it's about $21,000 total.
Okay. And you split that over how many homes roughly?
Yeah, you're looking at probably 20 plus homes.
Okay.
Maybe 30.
Okay, so that's reasonable.
You're looking at, and it's all based on the linear footage. So if you have a 60-foot wide lot, you might have a $1,200 to $1,600 bill. Others, if you've got a double lot, you're looking at a doubling of that.
Okay, all right. And Mayor, the reasons that somebody or a group will want their alley paved, reasons that they bring to the city.
A couple reasons I can think of right off the top of my head. Number one is it's always been paved, so it's got to continue to be paved. If it's deteriorated to the point where they need to just redo that, or there's others that, frankly, if they've always had a gravel alleyway area, they want to smooth it out and that kind of thing.
Okay, all right. Yep. We're talking with Mitch Foster, City Manager of Ludington, and Mayor Mark Barnett here on the morning show. Let's talk about the if I say it right, the septage, right? And as well, and you called it juice. Right? Yeah. And go ahead if you want.
I'm just to give people a mental picture as to what we're really talking about. It's not a pile of dust. There's a more liquid quality to it.
Absolutely. So. And the leachate, right? Leachate rates. What are we discussing at tonight's meeting in particular? And there is a price attached to it, or a rate attached to it, right?
Sure. Okay. Yep. So the wastewater treatment plant will take in septage, where people hire a company to come in and clean out their septic tank.
Okay.
And so it takes that partially liquid, partially solid, whatever material in it, and it takes it to the wastewater treatment plant for processing.
Okay.
Yep.
And so there's a cost for that, that the homeowner, obviously the homeowner or the organization or whatever, you look at all the porta-johns around here as an example. Mm-hmm. Those are collected and brought there. Is that rate is there an increase in that rate potentially?
Yep, there's an increase in both of those, and I'm thinking I'm thinking the first increase goes from like $50 in septage up to like 52. I think is about the is about the rough increase. And then it provides for 24, 25, and 26 as I'm recalling the document.
Okay. And Mitch, is there anything wrong with increase? I mean, we know that increases come along. Is this natural?
Well, it will be. I'll put it that way only because for the long time we kind of set those rates, the septage and leachate rates, kind of on a as-needed basis. And what we, after talking with Chris Cassette, the wastewater treatment plant superintendent, his thought makes a lot of sense. Why not tie the leachate and septage rates to the same increases that residential properties and commercial properties have? So this new ordinance will allow, essentially say, all right, septage and leachate will change at the same time that homeowner rates change as well, or ratepayer rates change as well. So they're going to see 5% increases over the next 3 years as well, just like other homeowners are.
All right. Yep. Two topics to bring up. We got a letter. You got a letter as well from a community member. We're going to be chatting about that here in a moment. But as well, it wouldn't do justice if we didn't ask about some of the processes about septic in the sense under Ludington Avenue and such. Do we know where that process is? Is there still conversations happening from some of the topics that we've covered in the past here?
Yeah, so I'll use the example of the folks that live over on Ludington Avenue, kind of up by the 900 block. They had the issue where they had a line break potentially, or was cracked. It's not as bad. They haven't had any issues since we kind of had our folks go over there and rod and jet their line just to be able to look.
Okay.
However, we are going to be running our camera as soon as our camera's fixed and back from the shop. We're going to run our camera up their line, find out exactly where their crack or their slip is in their line that's kind of off.
Okay.
And then once we are able to give them that video, they have gotten bids from firms out of Grand Rapids to come up and actually run a sleeve down that line.
Okay.
And try to fix it for them long term.
All right. And will that last a long time, do you think, or no?
The sleeves, yes. The sleeves work really well. I mean, it's like a thermal plastic that just warms up and kind of cools in place. Okay. The one thing that, they're in this circumstance, and there are probably others in the city that are in this, when you have multiple households that are connected to a single line, and that line then connects into the main, you run the risk of, hey, if somebody causes an issue on my line, I don't have control over that very well. And so that's why even in our code, we require people, when they're building new, to hook up one house, one line, one main. Yeah. So if there are homeowners out there that know they're connected up to multiple properties on their, in their neighborhood, disconnect, try to work with, a local company to try to make those disconnections and reconnect to the main. It's just it's a safer and more kind of reasonable and rational approach.
Any idea when that changed from the multi-line? Was there a decade that happened here in the city at all? I would guess it all happened right once we all started having kind of standard practices in sewage or sewer treatment processes and those sorts of things, because you look at, especially a community like Ludington, where we've got areas that were set up as like vacation neighborhoods. It was easier and cheaper to do it that way versus everybody has their own line. Well, now that you have people living in some of these houses year-round or close to year-round, the lines can't handle as much, and they're overused, and so that's part of this. All right, that sounds fair. Mm-hmm. And to both of you, I apologize for the crappy conversation that we're having today. I'm sorry. That's so good. I tried that. I was thinking on that one for a moment, because we move into another part of this, Mr. Mayor, and it sounds like the city received a similar letter that the radio station received, and the reason why we're bringing this up is that community members, listeners, they can reach out to us at any time, as they do the city. Sure. And say, hey, I've got some concerns. Would love for you to address this. And so I won't read the entire letter here, but I'll kind of read kind of the meat here. It was and they didn't put a name to it, but they said the idea is behind the bathrooms, and they say those who frequent downtown and spend money deserve the basic right to a clean, new, warm public restroom, which the city has with the new facilities on the north side of James Street, Waterfront Park, and the boat launch. except for year-round locals don't get the privilege of using them throughout the year. They say, well, I understand the justification of the seasonal closures, heating, cleaning, vandalism, maintenance. I simply and respectively disagree. I believe to the closing of them throughout the year. I feel this is a basic service that municipalities should offer in order to serve their visitors, as well as take a bunch of the foot traffic off their retailers who are paying big tax dollars to the city. Goes on and says, I'm an ex-retailer who provided restrooms for the public, and I know the daunting task that can be from a cleanup standpoint. And then says, I feel the city just kind of needs to address this instead of Wesco being, a place that people go. There is multiple bathrooms in the area. I think the first concern that comes to my mind is keeping them open, maintaining them during the spring, summertime. That's kind of natural. Things happen. They need to be cleaned and so on and so forth. But it's kind of impossible to keep them open during the cooler months and the winter months. Is that correct?
Well, I think return on investment comes to mind in terms of how much the city, and first of all, the city's tasked with the idea of maintaining these restrooms and managing them, and we strive to keep them, as you say, clean and comfortable for folks to use, and to use the monetary resources efficiently and effectively to do that. And then we look at usage, frankly. I mean, in the summer months, even though it's warmer, the fact of the matter is there's just a lot more people that are using that feature, those restrooms. And so it makes sense to keep them open as long as we can. And I'm not gonna draw the distinction between, well, that's for the tourists. What I'm saying is that's for everybody. There's far more people locally that come out during those high traffic events and use those facilities as well. So I think it's used by everybody. The other thing is that when you in the middle of the winter, when you have maybe a few cars, for example, Stearns Auto Drive and Stearns Park, driving through there, I think it creates there's very little usage, and unfortunately, the police department experiences times. Those are the high property damage times, late at night, and then certainly in the off season, in the middle of the winter. So it's up to the city to try to manage that for the residents and the taxpayers.
When Mitch, when the bathrooms were put in the multiple locations that this resident is mentioning, in the park, where else, the boat launch, and in other areas, was it ever the goal of the city to have this as a year-round bathroom? And is there any issues with it being year-round, I guess, if you don't mind addressing that?
Yeah, so I'll touch on a positive year-round. So Legacy Plaza's restrooms are going to be open year-round. They were open last winter as well. The issue we run into there is because they're some of the only ones. They also get used a lot, as the mayor talked about, but we also have the vandalism piece. And when you have to pull out stall doors and stall walls on a regular basis because folks are vandalizing them or damaging them, that's closing them quite often. And so we try to keep them open as often as we can. When our cleaners go in there, they double check those things. The police go in there on a regular basis. But there are a lot of different issues associated with that. The other restrooms, I hate to say it, but most of those were built before I was in this role, likely when I was a kid. And I don't remember, and I've never dug into the plans to see whether or not, or the minutes to see whether or not they were built for that purpose in mind. What I will say is that to convert them into places that would be used year-round would be fairly expensive. We try to help out by having Legacy Plaza being year-round, but having the downtown or the other locations have porta-johns. When we put those porta-johns out there, we had people thanking us because they were still kept clean, they were still nice, and there were restroom facilities. And so I think we're doing the job that we're supposed to be doing. The costs are significantly less, obviously, with porta-johns. The issues are if all of a sudden we have a -5 degree night and we have water lines that start busting in all of these different restrooms, then we're going to be closed for a lot longer than just for a winter, because that's a whole nother ball of wax.
This person, and I do want to ask you, because you received a letter, and you obviously received a lot of correspondence from the community. I mean, that this individual addresses the porta-john and says that they're overused, or the overflowed, during events and such, and it's very they say it's so overused during the time of seasonal restroom closures. They're almost always, at the very least, disgusting. Is there a system in place to work with the porta-john companies to check them a bit more, to clean them a bit more? Is that something worth kind of investigating, I guess?
That would be the first complaint I'd heard about kind of those porta-johns being in a gross state. Our provider does a very good job of keeping them clean. And we have a number of folks that I know walk every day that use those restrooms, and that we're very thankful, and have not made a comment yet. And so, again, I think the letter may be generalizing a bit. And even in the letter, talking about how you've got private restrooms and trying to compare private restrooms to public restrooms. Public restrooms do not have somebody that is within 100 yards of them all the time, able to check them. We can't, as a city government, pay somebody to just stand at a restroom and make sure nobody damages it, make sure it stays clean. We just don't have that sort of manpower or money. And so trying to figure out the best ways to work within what we've got is what we're trying to do. And so, if there are complaints about those porta-johns, if there's things that we can do, if there's ways that we can keep the restrooms open up a little bit longer. I was talking with Joe Stickney this morning. We're looking at mid-October. As soon as essentially the weather starts to really turn, we have to be cognizant of the chance of a frozen pipe.
Yeah.
That is the biggest issue.
All right. When you received this letter, the last question, when you received this letter, what was your first thoughts in regards to this, this is the issue? Did you understand that maybe there's some issues out there? What's your initial thoughts, if you don't mind?
Restrooms are always a sticky subject, just because of the nature of, when you have to go, you have to go. And so if there's nothing nearby, then that gets in your head, and you are viscerally upset, and you're physically not feeling good. Mm-hmm. And so I completely understand the concern. Anytime I do get an anonymous letter, though, we work in the public sector, and you kind of do as well, Chris. Mm-hmm. You work in the public square. If people are unwilling to put their name behind something, there's no retaliation. I can't come after somebody because they don't like a bathroom. I have some very heart-to-heart conversations in my out-of-office days with folks that can, have big concerns or complaints, or even, frankly, yell at me in those meetings. Mm-hmm. I don't take it personally. This is the job. If you have a concern about something, bring it up. Come and stop by and see us. Put your name on it so I can at least contact you back and say, I need to understand this a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But when you don't do that, I can't dive into it any more than what you provide me.
Is there, from the letter, is there any action items, though, that need to be done by the city, or considered, I guess?
I think one of the things we need to follow up with some of our regular walkers to say, hey, what are the restrooms looking like when you're out there in the wintertime? We need to make sure that Legacy Plaza stays accessible year-round, and some of those things, and then see if there's little things that we can do in each of the other public restrooms to keep them open a little bit longer, or open them up a little bit earlier.
All right, Mr. Mayor, any additional comments?
Just this: if I'm reading the letter and I'm trying to understand one particular issue from the letter, it's that the opinion is that these restrooms should be open 24/7, 365, regardless of the cost and regardless of what it takes to do that. And what we've talked about here this morning really points out, and they're not excuses, but they're practical reasons as to why that's not possible. And frankly, what it would cost, although I don't have a number, what it would cost is just astronomical to meet the goal in the letter.
Okay, all right, and we appreciate the individual sending the letter. Obviously, we want to have that feedback. We want to have that input about topics so that we can bring them up here. And obviously, the person in his or her first comment, they said, we watch or listen to this segment with the mayor and city manager, and so if we can address some of these things, we'll try to address them. Mm-hmm. And if the individual wants to follow up, they can always follow up. That's a big part of being transparent this morning. Let's continue our topic. We're talking with the mayor of Ludington, Mark Barnett, and city manager Mitch Foster. You've got short-term rental licensing programs. We've got the short-term rentals here in the area. Is there a change coming to that, cost-wise, or limitation, or expansion? What are we looking at there?
Well, in terms of the number of licenses, which I think right now is at 50, there's no intention of raising that number right now. We're still, I think, frankly, and still in a sort of an assessment or an evaluation period as to how that impacts. One of the things that we're looking to do is to more appropriately define what the separation of those properties need to be. Okay. And as I recall, the proposed ordinance is 150 feet from the property lines. It was hard to, at the beginning of this, and in all fairness, at the beginning of this, when they said, okay, we're going to do these 50 licenses, and each block has different characteristics and could be separated by different distances. So some of that's been brought to bear through public comment and through people approaching the city and saying this is not working. And so the committee and council are considering something to help make that better.
Okay, all right. Is there a benefit, Mitch, to allowing this to happen, the short term? I mean, we have a lot of homes that are vacant in the winter, but does it help the city at all, or is this more of just a service for the community members?
I think, the changes themselves will help everybody, because they're also practical for the city standpoint from an enforcement action as well. Things like requiring people to respond when an issue comes up, public noticing things at their house about who's the contact information, letting neighbors know, those sorts of things. But in general, short-term rentals have they're a double-edged sword. You can have way too many of them and have issues with housing affordability, housing availability, or you can have not any of them, and you're missing out on a sector of tourism. And so I think the goal with council when they originally created this was to try to test out 50 or 30 originally. They bumped it to 50. And now we're at a place where we're trying to figure out what are those changes, as the mayor mentioned. How can we make some small changes to improve the ordinance, but also still make it easily to understand for everybody. And I think that's what the committee has done here.
All right. Is there one major one that's worth bringing up at this point?
Yeah, the one major one, and the mayor talked about it a little bit, is previously you could have two short-term rentals per block. So if you thought of like the stretch of North Ferry between Haight and Pere Marquette, that is one stretch of block. Now, it is a 150-foot separation. Okay. No matter the number on a block. So you might be able to fit 3 on a block, but that'd be really tight with that 150-foot separation. Okay. So as existing ones come off and new ones apply, if you have an existing short-term rental that's within 150 feet, you're out. Sorry. The goal is to try to not have these neighborhoods that are surrounded by short-term rentals. We had one on the 200 block in North Robert. You had the potential of having like 8 short-term rentals within a block and a half distance, and that just is too much for that little neighborhood.
All right, good information there.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's important to having this ordinance and this decision, this conversation out there helps people that are going to be future investors in terms of whether there's an STR short-term rental license available. Number one, and number two, I'm not just going to look at a house because it's a cute house and make a vacation rental, but does it conform with the setbacks of the other ones, and to know where they're at and to fully understand what it is that we'd be looking to go and invest in. So,
is there a way that the city can, and maybe this is already out there, a way to see a plotted map of all of these short-term rentals so that people can see, okay, this is available over here? Is that an option? We
have that. We do not have that now publicly, but if this ordinance is approved, there's a way on our assessing software that you can essentially say, from this property, I want a 150-foot radius to all touching properties. And so we could actually have that and show, because that was the same map that we used for the marijuana conversation when we said the distances between those for separation. Okay. We can do that. So then when people are looking to buy, they can just ask for that map. We can provide that to them and say, oh, okay, here are the spots that actually I could do it if I wanted wanted to.
All right, sounds fair. You've got the monthly police report that's on tap tonight. From a city manager standpoint, your thoughts on the performance of the city, the police chief, if you don't mind expressing that with the community this morning.
Yeah, Chief Jones has done a phenomenal job. He has reinvigorated officers that had been kind of stuck in a rut. He has gotten people moving in a specific direction as a team. He's got folks working together on different issues. I think he's still working very collaboratively with both the school district, the county sheriff's department. I think he's doing a great job so far. However, it's still early, and he's got hurdles to get over as we move forward, as like everybody does. And so it's how you adapt to those things that'll show really how he's at, where he's at.
Which staffing would be the one? Because
Absolutely.
I see there's some loss from LPD to like the sheriff's department and such. Is that natural? Is that something where just with the change in leadership, maybe some individuals were hoping to make that change? Can you address that just a little bit, if you don't mind?
Yeah, actually, we traded with them for at least one officer. So we brought on Austin Mendez, and they took two of ours. So in a small town like this, where people really love living here, there's going to be that chance of back and forth. It's just a reality. Because at one point in one stage in their life, they might really want X, and then they come to us, and then at a different stage they want Y and they go to the county, or they want Z and they end up working down in Oceana County because they want something completely different. So I think that's natural. However, we are fully staffed, which is great, and we've got a new SRO starting here in the next few weeks, Connor Gallahue. So that's great news. Austin Morris was promoted to sergeant, so that's really neat. We've got a great crew kind of moving forward, and I'm really excited.
And this gives the opportunity for Chief Jones, and actually I'll ask you, former chief, this gives Chief Jones the ability to kind of mold his department in sort of a direction that he wants to take it. Because with any leader, from the city to the police to fire, et cetera, you kind of want to have your thumb on the pulse of what's happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly want to take a look and see what are the talents, the skills, the abilities of the people that are on your staff that you work together with, and I think he's really doing a great job of understanding those and capitalizing on those and getting folks into areas where they can use those talents and skills and that type of thing. So I think he's doing it. Overall, I think he's doing a great job, and I can't say enough about how his real desire is really to plug into the community. I mean, he hit the ground running as far as I'm concerned, and just really, really appreciate him and Katie and having the ability to come into this community and go right to work. And
his plan is also to add a canine officer vehicle. Canine, and have that as an additional opportunity here. I know the businesses in the downtown area, they're going to try to have a fundraising weekend to try to get to this $80,000 mark. Did you see a need for a canine when you were police chief, or has things changed a lot since then?
Things have changed in terms of certainly the county continues that program, but the number one, the availability of resources, canines to respond, and then frankly, the number of incidents that require or are best handled with a canine have increased. And so I think it's important that this department, Ludington Police Department, has the ability to provide and to have one of those resources. You can look back through the years with a number of other initiatives and that kind of thing. Things change, and our response needs to change. And I think Chief Jones and the officers that are working on that are responding correctly.
All right, Mitch. Last few moments of this conversation for you.
Yeah.
In regards to this $80,000 price tag, do you think that's achievable? Do you think it's achievable in a year's time, or should we be looking at a multi-year here?
Chris, I can never guess what this community will do when it comes to fundraising goals. So I won't even venture a guess. What I will say though is that it's beyond the $80,000 that they're really trying to raise. It's the long ongoing maintenance and training of the officer that would be the handler and the canine itself. And so I think they're going to Sergeant Haveman, Officer Sanders, And then this group from downtown really trying to kick it off there. They're having other meetings with folks to try to see if there's interest in helping fundraise for this activity and this new member of the department, hopefully. So we'll see where it goes, but I'm excited. It's as the mayor mentioned, it's got need on, especially the law enforcement side, but there are other activities that K-9 can participate in that would be very beneficial to the community and would, allow us to be kind of a cooperative partner in other areas too.
All right. I won't dive too much into this. I know we got to wrap up, but we've got Christy Zimmerman and Patrick coming in, who's going to be later at LACA. And we're going to be streaming that on the Chamber's Facebook page, and hopefully the city maybe share that. I know we'll probably share that too. But let's talk about real quick the value of the assessment, the housing assessment that we're going to be talking about in the next, later this hour with Christy and Patrick here.
Yeah, I think the report itself is 200 plus pages. If you even just take a look at the summary, you pull away some pretty important pieces. The three items that have still stuck out in my head is the number of units that are required on both rental and owner occupied, and the income levels that those are actually more beneficial at. So, on the rental side, we need more at the lower income spectrum, whereas on the owner-occupied, more of that middle income is important. And then the number of, about 3,000 people travel into Mason County to work. We don't have spaces for them to live if they want to be here. And so I think those are important things that we as policymakers, or me as the policy administrator, and Mark and the members of City Council being the policymakers, need to take a step back and see how are we making positive impact on this, or are we doing the opposite? And so I think, just from my perspective at least, I think the city of Ludington's done a good job to try to help that with some of our zoning adventures, but also with working with developers. And so I think it's important. And the presentations both at LACA as well as at Scottville High School later this evening are really important for the community, and I would recommend everybody come out for those.
All right, sounds good. We're going to be diving into that subject with Christy and Patrick coming up in the 9 o'clock hour in about 30 minutes from now. So stick around for that. In the meantime, we appreciate you coming in and
Always.
And discussing this and addressing some of the concerns from the community, but also catching us up on some of the updates in regards to the city. 6:30 p.m. Tonight, City Council meeting.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. Yep. Thanks for correcting that. I don't want to let people be late for that. And hopefully we addressed a lot of the questions or topics that you wanted to address this morning. So
Thank you.
The Mayor of Ludington, Mark Barnett, and City Manager Mitch Foster. If you missed any of this segment, you can watch it in its entirety on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. Just check that out. It is 9:10 here on 102.7 Mom FM and Hot Country Hits 99.9. We will send it to news and weather, and then coming up, as mentioned, Christy Zimmerman and what's Patrick's last name?
Bowen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was elapsing, so I apologize about that. It's coming up this hour here on 102.7 WMOM and Hot Country Hits 99.9.
Hot Country Hits 99.9 WHCH.